Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead, close them. I want you to think about January 1st, 2026. Think about where you were, what you were feeling. Maybe you were standing somewhere, looking out a window, and you made a promise. You said something to yourself. Maybe you whispered it. Maybe you screamed it. Maybe you typed it into your phone at midnight with fireworks going off in the background and tears in your eyes. You said, this year is going to be different. This year is my year. Open your eyes. Now I want you to ask yourself one question. And I want you to be brutally, ruthlessly, uncomfortably honest with yourself right now. Because this is not the time for comfortable lies. This is the time for the truth that sets you free. How many days since January 1st have you actually lived like you meant it? Take a breath. Because I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm not here to tickle your ears and send you home with a warm, fuzzy feeling that disappears by Tuesday morning. I am here because I believe, with every fiber of who I am, that 2026 is not just a year on a calendar. It is a door. And that door is standing wide open right now, but it will not stay open forever. And the only question that matters, the only question that has ever mattered in the history of human beings who changed their lives, is this. Are you going to walk through it? Or are you going to stand on the other side, watching other people live the life you dreamed about? Because here's the thing about dreams. Dreams are free. They cost you absolutely nothing. You can dream in bed. You can dream on your lunch break. You can dream while you're scrolling through somebody else's highlight reel at 2 in the morning, wondering why their life looks like a movie and yours feels like a Monday. Dreams are free. But the life that exists on the other side of your dream, that will cost you everything. And I mean everything. I want to tell you about a man I know, a real man. His name is Marcus. Marcus grew up in a small town in rural Georgia. And when I say small, I mean the kind of small where everybody knows your business. Everybody has an opinion about your future. And the ceiling is so low you can feel it pressing down on the back of your neck before you're even old enough to drive. Marcus's father left when he was 7 years old. Just left. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a Tuesday morning where his dad was there and a Wednesday morning where he wasn't. And Marcus's mother, God bless that woman, she worked 2 jobs. She cleaned houses during the day and worked the register at a gas station 3 nights a week. And every single night, she came home smelling like floor cleaner and cigarette smoke from other people's cars. And she would sit on the edge of Marcus's bed and she would say the same thing. She would say, baby, you are going to be something. You hear me? You are going to be something. And Marcus would nod because he loved his mother, because he believed her. But somewhere inside him, somewhere deep and quiet and painful, there was a voice that said, but what if she's wrong? What if this is all there is? What if the ceiling is real? Marcus got to high school and that voice got louder. He started running with the wrong crowd, not because he was bad, but because belonging felt better than believing. He started skipping classes, his grades dropped. His coach pulled him aside one day and said, Marcus, you have a gift. You run like you're running away from something. And Marcus laughed. But that night, lying in bed, he thought about what the coach said. And he realized he was running away from something. He was running away from the possibility of trying and failing. Because if you never truly try, nobody can ever say you truly failed. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Because I've talked to thousands of people over the years, and I've come to understand something profound about human beings. We are not afraid of failure. Not really. What we are afraid of is being seen failing. What we are afraid of is putting everything we have into something, going all in, bleeding for it, sacrificing for it, and then standing in the rubble of it and having to face ourselves and say, I gave everything, and it wasn't enough. That fear is the invisible prison that more people are living in than any physical cage ever built. Marcus dropped out of college after 1 semester. He went home. He got a job at a warehouse loading trucks at 4 in the morning. And he told himself the same story that millions of people tell themselves every single day. He said, this is temporary. This is just until I figure things out. This isn't my real life. 5 years passed. 5 years of 4 in the morning. 5 years of 4 in the morning. 5 years of the same warehouse. 5 years of this is temporary. And one day, he was 26 years old. He was sitting on the loading dock on his break, eating a sandwich, and a truck pulled up. And the driver of the truck was a man from his old neighborhood. A guy named Terence who had grown up 2 streets over, same background, same nothing, same ceiling pressing down. And Terence stepped out of that truck, not as a driver, as the owner. His name was on the side of the truck. His company. And Marcus looked at that truck and he looked at Terence and something cracked open inside him. Not painfully, not like breaking, more like a seed cracking open in the ground. You know, when a seed cracks, from the outside it looks like destruction. But from the inside, it's the beginning of everything. Marcus walked up to Terence and he said, "How?" Just that one word. How? And Terence looked at him for a long time and said, "I decided that temporary was a lie I was telling myself, so I stopped telling it." Now, I want you to sit with that for a second because I know some of you, right now, are living in temporary. You've been living in temporary for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. You've been telling yourself that this job, this situation, this place you're in, it's not your real life. You're just passing through. Your real life starts later. Your real life starts when conditions are perfect. Your real life starts when you have more money, more time, more support, fewer obstacles, the right opportunity, the right partner, the right moment. Let me save you a decade of waiting. The conditions will never be perfect. The perfect moment is a myth. And later is the most expensive word in the English language because later is where dreams go to die. Later is where greatness goes to rot. Later is the graveyard of everything you were ever meant to do and be and create and give to this world. There is only now. There has only ever been now. And now is where action lives. I want to talk to you about action because I think we misunderstand it. We think action is this giant, dramatic movie moment thing. We think it looks like someone quitting their job in a blaze of glory, or standing on a mountaintop with the wind blowing through their hair, or making one bold decision that changes everything overnight. We've been fed that story by movies, by social media, by the highlight reels of other people's journeys. But that is not what action looks like. Real action, the kind that changes your life, is quiet. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel inspiring when you're doing it. It feels like getting up when you don't want to get up. It feels like making a call you're afraid to make. It feels like writing the first sentence of a book you don't know how to finish. It feels like going to the gym when your mind is giving you 17 perfectly logical reasons why. Today is not the day. It feels like sitting down and doing the work when every distraction in the world is pulling at you like a riptide. Action is not a feeling. Action is a decision. And decisions, real ones, are not made in the emotion of a moment. They are made in the quiet, unglamorous, ordinary moments when nobody is watching, when nobody is cheering, when there's no music playing in the background. Marcus went home that night after seeing Terence. He sat at his kitchen table, the same kitchen table he'd sat at as a child, because he was still living in his mother's house at 26. And he took out a notebook. And he wrote at the top of the page, "What do I actually want?" Not what does my neighborhood expect. Not what does my family think is realistic. Not what seems safe. Not what I think I deserve based on the story I've been telling myself. What do I actually want? And it took him 3 hours to write one sentence. 3 hours. Because when you've spent years shrinking yourself, when you've spent years making yourself small so the ceiling doesn't hurt as much, the act of wanting something big feels almost arrogant. It feels dangerous. It feels like setting yourself up. But he wrote it. He wrote, "I want to own a business that takes care of my mother." Just that. Simple, specific, true. And then he slept. The next morning, 4 a.m., the alarm went off. And here's the moment. Here's the moment that nobody talks about. Here's the moment that's not in any movie. Marcus laid there in the dark, and he thought about what he'd written. And his mind, his brilliant, terrified, self-protecting mind, immediately started generating reasons why it was a foolish idea. Too old to start. No money. No connections. No education. Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is? Terence is different. Terence always had it. You? Come on, Marcus. He lay there listening to all of it. And then he got up. Not because the fear was gone. The fear was absolutely still there, standing in the corner of the room like an unwelcome house guest. He got up with the fear. He got up through the fear. He got up and he made a cup of coffee and he opened his laptop and he spent 45 minutes before work reading about how to start a small business. That was the action. That was it. 45 minutes before a warehouse shift. No cameras, no applause, no dramatic music. Just a 26-year-old man in a kitchen in Georgia deciding that his life was going to mean something. Here's what I want you to understand with every cell in your body. The gap between the life you're living and the life you want to live is not made of missing talent. It's not made of missing luck. It's not made of missing opportunity. The gap is made of days. It's made of the accumulation of days when you chose comfort over growth, when you chose the scroll over the work, when you chose the excuse over the action, when you chose the snooze button over the sunrise. Every single day is a deposit or a withdrawal from the bank account of your future. And I hear you already. I know you've heard this before. I know you've sat in front of a screen at midnight and watched videos just like this one and felt the fire burn in your chest and said, yes, this is it. This is the day everything changes. And then you woke up the next morning and nothing changed. I want to talk about that. Because that cycle, the inspiration to inertia cycle, that is the most common prison sentence that human beings voluntarily give themselves. We get inspired. We feel the fire. We do nothing with the fire. The fire goes out. We feel worse about ourselves than before we got inspired. And then we scroll back and get inspired again. Like emotional junk food that feels satisfying in the moment and leaves us emptier than before. Why does that happen? Why does the fire go out? Because inspiration without a plan is just a feeling. And feelings by their nature are temporary. Feelings rise and fall like tides. But systems are what stay when the feeling is gone. Systems are what carry you through the Tuesday afternoon when inspiration is nowhere to be found and the work still needs to get done and life is loud and complicated and nothing is cooperating. Let me ask you something. If you wanted to get strong, physically strong, would you go to the gym once, work out until you were exhausted, and then wait to feel inspired before going again? Of course not. You'd have a schedule. You'd go on specific days at specific times, regardless of whether you felt like it. You'd do the reps when you didn't want to do the reps. And over time, not in a flash of overnight transformation, over time, your body would change. The same principle applies to every single area of your life. Your finances don't change with a moment of inspiration. They change with a monthly budget that you stick to, even when it's boring, even when it's restrictive, even when you really want to spend that money on something that feels good right now. Your relationships don't change with one grand romantic gesture. They change with a daily, quiet, unsexy practice of showing up, really showing up, with patience and attention and care, especially on the days when it's hard. Your business, your craft, your art, it doesn't change with a vision board. It changes with the daily practice of doing the thing, learning the thing, improving the thing, even the progress is invisible, even when nobody is watching, even when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I need to address something, and I need to address it head on because I've been doing this long enough to know that there's a voice in the room right now. Maybe it's in your head. Maybe it sounds like someone you grew up with. Maybe it sounds like your own inner critic, wearing the face of every person who ever told you to be realistic. And that voice is saying, but you don't understand my situation. And you're right, I don't know your specific situation. Too. I don't know your childhood, your trauma, your health challenges, your financial circumstances, your family obligations, the specific weight of the specific life you are carrying. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know the nights you've cried in the dark. I don't know what you've lost. I know this. I know that throughout human history, in every era, in every culture, under every conceivable condition of poverty and oppression and hardship and pain, there have been people who had every reason to give up, every excuse to stay small, every justification to accept the ceiling, and they chose not to. I know about Oprah Winfrey, born into poverty in rural Mississippi, abused, told she was not fit for television, who became the most powerful woman in American entertainment. I know about J.K. Rowling, clinically depressed, a single mother on welfare, rejected by 12 publishers, who wrote the best-selling book series in human history by hand, at a cafe table with her baby in a stroller. I know about Nick Vujicic, born with no arms and no legs, no arms, no legs, who travels the world telling people that their life has purpose and watching them stand up and believe it. I'm not telling you their stories to make your struggle feel small. I'm telling you their stories because I want you to see something. I want you to see that the human spirit, your spirit, is more powerful than any circumstance. Not because circumstances don't matter. They do matter. They do. They are real and they are heavy, and anyone who tells you to just ignore your circumstances has never truly had to carry them. But circumstances are the starting point. They are not the ending point. Your starting point does not determine your destination. Your decisions do. Oh, decisions do. Let me come back to Marcus. Because Marcus's story is not a fairy tale. It is not a straight line. And I think that's the most important part. Marcus spent 3 years building his business on the side while working the warehouse. 3 years of waking up at 3:30 in the morning so he could work on his business before his shift. 3 years of no social life, no vacations, no weekends. 3 years of his friends calling him crazy. 3 years of his own family saying, Marcus, baby, you need to be more realistic. You have a good job. Don't mess that up. And then in year 2, he got his first contract. A small one. Barely covered expenses. But it was his. He earned it. He built it. And I could tell you that when he got that contract, everything fell into place. I wish I could tell you the universe suddenly cooperated. Doors flew open and success came flowing in. It didn't. 6 months later, his biggest client, the one he'd built everything around, the one he thought was his foundation, pulled the contract. Overnight. No warning. Just a phone call and a thank you and a door closing in his face. Marcus lost 60% of his revenue in one afternoon. He sat in his car in the parking lot of the warehouse because he still had his shift in an hour. And he sat there in the dark and he had a choice to make. And that choice is the same choice that every single person in this room is going to face if you haven't already. The choice between this is a sign I should stop and this is a lesson I needed to learn. He chose the lesson. He went back to the warehouse. He worked his shift. He went home. He wrote in his notebook what had gone wrong, what he could learn from it, what he would do differently. He did not crawl back to comfort. He did not let the failure become the story. He made it one chapter. 18 months later, Marcus had replaced that client 5 times over. He had 6 employees over. He moved his mother out of that house. He moved her into a place with a garden because she'd always wanted a garden. And she'd spent 30 years cleaning other people's gardens and never had one of her own. And on the day he handed her the keys, this 240-pound warehouse worker who hadn't cried since he was 7 years old, watching a Wednesday morning with no father in it, he cried like a child because it wasn't just a house. It wasn't just a garden. It was the answer to every year of doubt. It was proof that the voice that said, be realistic, was wrong. It was the physical, tangible manifestation of all those 3:30 mornings and all those lonely nights and all those client calls that didn't go through and all those setbacks that he refused to let become his story. That is what action creates. Not overnight. Not without pain. Not without failure. Not without doubt so deep it feels like quicksand. But in time, with consistency, with refusal, with a kind of stubborn, relentless, beautiful refusal to accept a smaller life than the one you know you were built for. Now I want to talk about something that most people are not talking about because it makes people uncomfortable. I want to talk about the people in your life. I want to talk about the people who love you and who are holding you back. This is the hardest conversation, untarist conversation. Because the enemies of your growth are not usually strangers. They are usually not mean people who want you to fail. They are often the people who care about you most. They are parents, siblings, friends, partners, people who love you so much that the thought of you failing breaks their heart, and so to protect themselves from that pain, they talk you out of trying. They are the ones who say, but what if it doesn't work out? They are the ones who remind you of the last time you tried something and it didn't go the way you planned. They are the ones who have built their own ceiling so thoroughly, so carefully, that your refusal to accept a ceiling feels like a personal rejection. Like you're saying, by choosing to believe in more, that their acceptance of less was wrong. It's not personal, but it's real. And I'm not telling you to cut people off. I'm not telling you to abandon the people who love you. Family is precious. Loyalty is real. But I'm telling you this. You cannot let someone else's fear become the blueprint for your life. You cannot allow someone's love for you. Genuine, sincere, beautiful love to become a leash. The greatest act of love you can give the people who care about you is to become the fullest, most alive version of yourself. Because when you transform, when you actually do the thing they said couldn't be done, you don't just change your life. You give everyone around you permission to believe something bigger for themselves. You become evidence. You become the living, breathing proof that the ceiling was never real. Marcus told me that after he moved his mother into that house, his cousin, who had been one of the loudest voices telling him to be realistic, called him. And his cousin said, "I've been thinking about this business idea I have." And Marcus smiled, because that's what transformation does. It's contagious. The courage to change your life, when lived out loud, gives other people permission to believe they can change theirs. Your breakthrough is not just for you. It never was. Let me talk about failure. Not in the way that everybody talks about failure. The neat packaged, failure is just a stepping stone narrative that sounds right, but goes down too easy. I want to talk about real failure. The kind that doesn't feel like a stepping stone. The kind that feels like drowning. I failed publicly once in a way that I could not escape. I was running a company I had poured everything into, 4 years of my life. Every saved dollar I had. I had employees who trusted me, clients who believed in me, a story I was telling the world about who I was and what I was building. And it fell apart, publicly, loudly, messily. The way that real failure falls apart. Not cleanly, not quickly, but in stages, like a building coming down slow. So you have to stand there and watch every floor collapse. I remember the day I had to walk into a room and tell my team I couldn't make payroll. I remember the sound of that silence. Silence. I remember driving home that night. And I use the word home loosely because at that point I was sleeping on a couch in a friend's apartment. And I sat in a parking lot for 2 hours, just sat there. Not crying, past crying, just empty. Not crying, just empty. And in that emptiness, something very interesting happened. When everything is stripped away, the title, the narrative, the identity you've built around what you do, when all of it is gone, you find out who you actually are. And what I found out about myself in that parking lot is that I was still here. I was still breathing. The loss was real. The failure was real. The consequences were real and serious. And I would spend 2 years cleaning them up. But the person who existed before the company, the person who would exist after, I was still here. And that was the beginning. Not the end. The beginning. Because failure is only the end if you decide it is. It is only a tombstone if you engrave it and lie down in front of it. But if you choose, and it is a choice, the hardest choice you will ever make, if you choose to let it be a classroom instead of a coffin, then the failure becomes the most expensive and most transformative education you will ever receive. I came back slower than I wanted, humbler than I expected. I expected. But I came back. And everything I built after that failure, I built differently. Better. Because I'd been through the fire and I knew something about fire now. I knew it burns, yes, but I also knew it doesn't kill you. And once you know fire doesn't kill you, it loses its power to paralyze you. That is what the other side of failure feels like. Not triumph, not arrogance, but a quiet, unshakable knowing. A knowing that says, I've been down. I know what down feels like. I got back up. I know what that feels like too. And now I am not afraid of the falling anymore. Because I know that the getting up is in me. I've done it. I have proof. You need to find your proof. Whatever version of that story is yours, whatever failure you've been carrying like a shameful secret, hiding it from people, letting it define what you're willing to try next. I am here to tell you that your failure is not your identity. Your failure is evidence that you tried. And trying, imperfectly and messily, and with outcomes you didn't want. Trying is the only path to the life you were built for. There is no other way. You cannot think your way there. You cannot plan your way there. You cannot plan your way there. You cannot vision board your way there. You cannot wait your way there. You cannot watch other people do it and absorb their success through the screen. You have to do it. You have to try. You have to fail. You have to adjust. You have to try again. You have to fail better. You have to get up one more time than you've been knocked down. And then one day, not all at once, but one day, you look up and you realize that the life you're living is the life you used to dream about. And that day is worth everything it cost you. Now, I want to talk to you specifically about 2026, because here's the thing about this particular moment in time, this particular year, it is not just another year. We are living through a period of extraordinary change, The world is moving faster than it has ever moved. Opportunities that didn't exist 5 years ago are accessible right now. Today, to people with a laptop and a willingness to learn and a decision to start. Industries are being rewritten, the rules are being rewritten, which means the excuses are also being rewritten. The old excuse of I don't have access is becoming obsolete. The old excuse of I don't have the right education is becoming obsolete. The old excuse of I don't have the right connections is being challenged every single day by people who started with nothing but a phone and an internet connection and a relentless refusal to accept irrelevance. This is your moment, not because the world is going to hand you anything. It won't. But because the barriers between where you are and where you want to be have never been lower. The tools have never been more available. The knowledge has never been more accessible. And the world's need for what you specifically, uniquely, irreplaceably have to offer has never been greater.